Hello and welcome back to Tinfoil Helmets, your occasional spicy hot take roundup of the latest F1 rumors, with the almost believable conspiracy theories to back them up. Everything here has been carefully researched for hours to make sure it's totally founded in logic, reason, truth, or not. Who knows? So Imola, what a race!
It was an amazing race, and I think the first thing we need to do is cover whether we got anything right. So let's start with my prediction, which was Merck's Imola's upgrades will be barely visible and will have no effect on the performance of the car relative to the rest of the field. I'm going to say this is partially right, because we didn't see any of the upgrades.
Oh, I was going to say that, no, this is actually totally wrong, because I don't know if you saw, but the Merc was at the Nürburgring 24-hour ring, and they had the Nürburgring 24-hour endurance race. They had the new B-Spec car out there that clearly had side pods. It was visible. There were new visible changes to the Merc.
Are you sure that wasn't the model car, the show car that F1 sold to everybody?
All I know is it was there.
Trick is, I will have to go check, but the trick is if you look at the DRS, if you look at the rear wing, and if it has a DRS actuator, it can be real. If it doesn't have the DRS actuator, it's just the show car. Okay.
But Mercedes did have a car out at the 24 Hours of the Nürburgring, and that was supposed to be the new car because it was not at Imola.
Interesting. I'm still going to say I still get partial credit for the actual Imola itself because we didn't see anything.
Well, the second thing we guessed speculated on was that there would be rain, and
100% correct.
Yeah, by a lot. We
yes
nailed that one maybe a little too well.
Too well and too much rain, and I feel for the people of Imola. And credit to Yuki for getting in there and cleaning it up like a badass.
I mean, yeah, Yuki's just the best.
Yeah, it was. I was watching the news roll out as it was getting closer, and I was surprised that they hadn't cancelled it sooner, based on how bad the flooding was. And even if nothing else, nothing to do with the track itself, but the cat herding of the thousands of fans was like ridiculous. Like they needed to cancel it because of that alone.
Now, speaking briefly of Yuki, apparently he does not have a contract for 2024. Does helping clean up the streets of Imola raise his status to Helmut Marko to continue him to have a seat?
From a PR perspective, yes, but to Helmut Marko himself, I don't think it really helped.
Yes, if he was cleaning up the track, maybe, because we know Helmut only cares about on-track performances.
Exactly. If you clean the track, make sure you could get out there and then stuck it on pole, it would have been a winner.
You know, that's a great segue into our renamed segment, Does Blank Still Have a Job? And, of course, the blank we've been referring to is Zach Brown. Currently still has a job. Did you by any chance... Yeah, did you watch any of the Indy 500 qualifying this weekend?
I have not watched any of that.
Well, we can talk about it now. We can talk about it in a little bit. But there was no other motorsport to watch this weekend. Well, I guess the 24 Hours of the Nürburgring. But I was suckered into watching some Indy 500 qualifying, and what an event it actually was for watching qualifying. For one car on track at a time, it was very interesting.
Interesting.
So the format, which I had to look up and I messaged you, it's so crazy it might be genius or it's the stupidest thing ever.
It is in my reading queue.
Right. So they do a random draw of all the drivers, and they all go out one at a time to set their opening qualification, and it's average speed over 4 laps. So you do 10 miles, and it's time average speed, but it's a 4-lap average.
Yep.
After everybody does their initial run, and you can pass on your initial run, there were 2 drivers that did. There are 2 lanes in pit lane. There is the priority lane, and there is the, passive lane. I forget what the other lane was called. But essentially, if you go into the priority lane, you can go out again, and you are the priority cars to go back out on track, but you will erase your past qualifying time. You can be in lane 2, and if you don't go faster, you can keep it, but there's no guarantee you'll go back out on track if everybody's just staying in the priority lane. Yeah.
So if you believe really strongly that you can go faster, you'll go take that priority and run that risk. If on the other hand you're like, I got a pretty good lap, I'm willing to risk that being my only lap, you'll go into the passive lane.
Yes, yeah.
Interesting.
And then
I think that would be really interesting for Monaco.
Yeah, like Will Buxton had a tweet out this morning that was like, after watching Indy 500 qualifying, should we do some of this for Monaco? And this is kind of what I've always thought we should do for Monaco qualifying. because like on top of that, then you had the bottom 4 go to day 2 and the top 12 go to day 2. And the top 12, then you get to 6, and then you have a one run go for pole. But the bottom 4 are competing for the last 3 spots on the on the grid. So, I don't think we could really do that part of F1, but I love the concept of, hey, everybody go set a banker time, and then do you want to risk? Do you want to be in the passive lane or the active lane, like the priority lane or the And I thought that was a very cool thing of, how do you want to bank things? And it's just a 5-hour timer of however many runs we get done in 5 hours, we're good.
It introduces the aspect of skill that I think is often missing in some other places, in that it requires the judgment of the driver and the team to know whether they can go out. I suspect it also gives an opportunity for the driver to ignore what the team is saying because they're like, nah, mate, I can totally get another 4 laps out of these tyres. If you go into the priority lane, you get new tyres.
There are a lot of, I think you always get new tires. They burn through a lot of rubber at Indy. It's not quite like here are your 12 sets for the weekend. I mean, they have Firestone tires up the wazoo. And yeah.
Interesting.
And 4 McLaren Arrows in the they made it to the top 12 shootout. They didn't get it make it on pole, but they I think split 2 and 2. 2 went to the top 6. 2 were kind of right there. So McLaren's looking good for next week at the Indy 500.
Technically, isn't there Alex Palou, or like a McLaren driver, or signed to McLaren, or one of Zach Brown's collected drivers that he keeps in reserve? And he's on pole, right? He
is on pole, but I believe he is racing for Chip Ganassi.
He is, but there was this whole thing that he was signed with McLaren, and there was a whole contract dispute. Like, we had 2 contract disputes last year. We had Piastri and Palou.
I thought it was Pato O'Ward was the other one. Was he not?
No. Pato O'Ward was not in the contract negotiations. They got to the point that they signed, and Chuck Ganassi Racing was like, this is unacceptable.
Oh, yeah, here it is. Contract controversy on his Wikipedia page. There was some...
It's even made it to his Wikipedia page. It was truly real news.
With Arrows McLaren.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, looks good.
So the next person in our Does Blank Still Have a Job is Otmar Schnaffhauser.
He did not get favorable press from the Alpine PR department after
they were
Miami. They were not happy.
No, I mean, not to jump all the way to Alpine Ways drama, but Alpine threw the whole team, like the CEO, Laurent Rossi, just threw the whole team, the entire team, under the bus. It wasn't like, I don't like Otmar, he's doing a crappy job, maybe we should fire him. It was like, the engineers are terrible, everybody's grumpy, they don't know how to do anything anymore. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, you get... That may be a factual statement, but you don't go and say that to the press. Like,
just as a quick aside, wasn't it the Alpine corporate lawyers that screwed up the Oscar situation last year? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
So maybe it's not just the F1 team that needs to be looking at themselves for a change.
Indeed. So I thought that was pretty bad, but it appears Otmar is at least on notice.
Yeah, and I think we've had a side conversation about this of, is the pink Alpine faster than the blue Alpine?
We would have found out for sure this weekend, but it rained. And so we'll find out at Monaco, where it won't go anywhere because nobody can go anywhere at Monaco because it's a terrible track.
But it is a spectacle.
It is a spectacle. It is a spectacle. It is a laugh. It is the place to go if you want to go watch F1 but not really have to deal with it. Monaco, place to go.
And Nick DeVries, it's not looking good.
Not looking good, and for once I wholly support the fact that it's not looking good, and I think he should be out of F1.
Interestingly enough, Marco said that Danny will not replace Nick, but I think we've heard some things like from Helmut before of like, oh yeah, we're not going to replace Alex Albon mid-season. Oh, we're not going to replace Pierre Gasly mid-season.
It is the classic PR move. You either get the complete non-answer, which is a commitment, right? Like when you say, oh, blah, blah, blah stuff, blah, 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 which is like, oh, clearly it's happening. Then there's the other one, which is the absolute emphatic, no questions asked denial, which means the opposite. Always, right? Like, you see it in all corporate PR, you see it in sports, you see it in politics. It's like, and he said no, and it's not going to be Danny, which means guarantees that Nick will get fired halfway through the season, and maybe we'll get Danny back in an AlphaTauri. Now,
put yourself in Helmut Marko's shoes for a minute. We need to kick Nick DeVries out. Do you bring in, Liam from F2, or do you bring Danny in?
I think I would probably bring Danny in for the rest of the season because I think the team actually needs that stability of a qualified, knowable driver in combination with the fact that they're losing their team principal. I think it's at the end of this year, right? Frost is not Frost. Tost is making the departure, and I feel like that would bring some stability to the team to at least get them through to the end of the season. Where I still think Yuki needs more time to grow, and I think bringing in Liam Lawson in the middle of the season, I think just sets him up for failure in the traditional Red Bull way, which is high expectations.
Is Liam? Is he running for the? How far is he back in the standings right now?
I don't know. I wasn't sure if he was. He is still in F2, right? Because he is technically the official primary reserve driver for Red Bull.
I don't see him on the standings. He might not be.
Yeah. Oh no, this is it. He went to what's the Japanese one?
Super Formula.
Super Formula. He went to Japan because he'd done 2 seasons in F2 and was going nowhere, and they've sent him to Super Formula to attempt to give him that chance. And so I think he has some off races, which is where Danny stands in because of the complex. I don't think he's ready to pull over to F1. Otherwise, I think he would. I think he would have got it instead of Nick. To be brutally honest, they know him as he's a known quantity, and so they would have signed him.
Then you got to put Danny in that seat.
Yeah, I think so. I think for the rest of the season, and I think it's Danny's last hurrah. Right, like he needs to come into that seat. He needs to be able to drive way better than Yuki. Like he should drive way better than Yuki, and then maybe he can find a real seat in F1 over the next season, maybe, right? Because I wouldn't want to bring him in and make him the permanent driver at AlphaTauri. It's the wrong makeup for AlphaTauri.
Yeah, definitely agree. But it's got to be. He's got to show up. He's got to outdrive Yuki. As much as I like Yuki, he's got to just wipe the floor with him.
Yes. Shall we move on to some between race drama?
I mean, we've already covered a lot of it, but I think
we have.
Most importantly, right off the heels of the Fernando Alonso Taylor Swift rumors, Lewis and Shakira were on a boat in Miami.
Yes, this. When you sent this to me, I was like, no, and then I was like, yes, and I was surprised, and it was fascinating, and I just can't help but think it's Lewis in competition with Alonso. It is like, okay, so you can go off and get Tay-Tay, who's like, one of the greatest pop stars of all time, blah, 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 blah. But screw you, I'm going with Shakira. There's a whole country that will go to war for her.
Man, those two.
Yeah.
Do you think there's any chance, like, we could get, like, a book from them where, like, they each, like, write a, like, they switch off who's the narrator each chapter, and it's like, all right, you want to talk about Hungary 2007? Here's my chapter about it. And then the next chapter is Lewis. Well, let me tell you about Hungary 2007.
I have to say, I think that would be a really good book.
That would be an amazing book.
If they could bury the hatchet and be... I don't expect them to be 100% truthful, but I expect them to be honest to the reality. And then I would kill for the audiobook read by them, where each one reads the other one's chapter
with commentary.
Yes, it would be amazing.
Forward by Ron Dennis.
Oh yes, for yes, that would be very good. Oh, and the wrap up, the prologue, the wrap up chapter should be by Toto.
The epilogue, yeah, definitely.
Epilogue, that's the word I was looking for. So yes, that was the only piece of between race drama. We do have some top takes and rumors that were late breaking, but we'll get to those at the end.
So, who do you think lost out from Imola not happening?
As a Merc fanboy, I think Merc really got screwed. I think they probably lost a month in terms of development, solely because they can go drive at Monaco, and maybe the car is brilliant. Maybe it's fantastic, but it tells them nothing, because Monaco is a completely pointless track and bears no resemblance to any other track in the entire calendar. And therefore, even if it's the most amazing car and it's 25 seconds ahead, it's just so much faster, it doesn't tell them anything. And so they will have to wait till Barcelona, which is probably a good track for them to run on. They'll have lots of test data on that track. But it will take them till Barcelona to really work that out, which means they can't make any adjustments, they can't tweak, they can't take the learnings that they'd have had from Imola to bring to whatever the race is after Barcelona, right? Because that's the realistic time frame that they would have been able to bring even newer parts. And now you're probably looking at the race after Barcelona. And so I think they got proper screwed.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's interesting that they were going to run both cars in the B spec. They weren't even going to try to, like, okay, well, is this better than the previous car? They were just going to go straight of, no, this is where we need to go.
Yeah, if I was a Merc engineer, I'd have bitten my fingers off. I would be so nervous just because making the BB choice to go out at Imola with that runtime, with the time window available to you, would have made sense. You're like, okay, we can take this risk, but you're losing a whole month. And if you still can't correlate your car to the computer, you are screwed. It is a disaster for them if it turns out that correlation has not been addressed. Or at least overcome, maybe is the right way to say it.
I will say I think they've been on this design now, I guess, for almost 18 months, essentially, the nose side pod design. And I think they've really realized they've run it about as far as they can go and need to make drastic changes. So I think even if they take a step backward once we get to Spain and have a true idea of what this new pace is, like at least then, if you think back to 2021, where they looked nowhere in the middle of the season and they were just gathering data, and then they put a brand new engine in Lewis's car and used all that data, and suddenly we had a title fight on our hands.
Yeah, it was before Brazil when they slapped the new engine. They'd finally dialed in the car, like the comments. It was true about the 2022 car. Yeah. The window in which it was a valuable car and would drive reasonably well was basically so narrow that it took them a long time to realize how narrow that setup window was. It was interesting. I read a comment from one of the media people who had done an interview with Lewis previously, and one of the biggest complaints he's had, and apparently it's one of the things they've been trying to address, is the way that they got the zero pods to work is they moved the driver really far forward in the center of balance of the car, and it just messed up his vibes. And so one of the things they've been trying to do is move it back. Like this is a non-trivial upgrade to this car, which is why I think there's so much risk involved.
Not to mention the cost cap.
Yes, not to mention the cost cap. I do wonder what's going to happen with that. At least they saved a race and they don't have to do that as much.
That's true. And anyway, you still get the money for the race. You should.
Yes, there's no subtraction.
Right. Yeah, so Ferrari's new floor. I mean, it's new floor suspension upgrades. That could be perfect for Monaco, given it's a bit of a more chassis-dependent track compared to an aero-dependent track. Granted, they'll have no runtime on it before Charles throws it into a wall in practice 2. Yeah.
Guaranteed. The thing I suspect about the Ferrari is they're much more incremental upgrades, and therefore the reality of the time lost that I was espousing about Merc is much smaller for Ferrari. Also, I believe Ferrari do understand the correlation between the computer and the track much more so than Mercedes do, so maybe it's not as risky for them.
Right. Aston was going to bring a new floor. That could still be somewhat interesting at Monaco.
Yeah, I think Aston is really... I think Alonso previously said he thinks Monaco is a track that he has a brilliant opportunity at, specifically because he can qualify. The car has got pretty good pace, and it does really well in low-speed corners. And so that is exactly what you have at Monaco, and I think it's his one chance to win. And if they've got a new floor, assuming it doesn't screw up that low-speed performance, that's pretty good. I think there's a good chance there. I don't think they lost out. I think they understand their car well enough that I don't think that they've lost anything significant. I think they've lost even less than Ferrari in terms of missing out on Imola.
I was hearing more things throughout the week of how long does Lawrence keep Lance around?
Yeah, I saw a couple of stories saying how he's key to their future, which strikes me as somebody started planting PR stories after somebody said they should get rid of him. Somebody must be listening to the podcast last week.
Or somebody's podcast.
Definitely ours, unquestionably.
Looks like there might be some more rain in the forecast for Monaco, too. That could really just throw...
Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. It's also a Monaco with a normal schedule. It doesn't do stupid things on Thursday and then nothing on Friday.
We're just ignoring the religious holidays?
Apparently so.
Interesting.
Also, the TV production is now being done by F1 like every other track. So maybe we'll not get cut away right as there's an important overtake from Sebastian Vettel.
You mean the one overtake?
The one overtake, yes. Irony being is that was to watch Lance bounce over a curb.
I mean, it was a good bounce. Well, So what an Imola race. I think we really covered it top to bottom, everything that happened there from first lap of free practice 1 right up until the surprise ending we had there.
Yep.
So
got to see those new tires. It was amazing.
Oh yeah, those new wet weather tires. They worked fantastic. Yep. Yeah, really cleared all the water.
Yeah.
So what else is going on?
So late-breaking spicy take / rumor that I saw just as I had arrived at my destination on my trip. There is a strong suggestion from the Daily Mail that Lewis is going to sign to Ferrari for £40 million. And I don't know if I'm able to ingest and huff that much hopium. It's got to be a Lewis fan. You've got hopium that maybe he will get an 8th title. And if it's Ferrari, you've got to deal with the Ferrari hopium in a desperate hope that maybe they won't screw up stuff.
I mean, that is really quite the thing of like, the Ferrari is probably closer to the Red Bull than the Merc is at this point in time. How long does Lewis have to evaluate this decision? Because like if Merc starts coming on after the summer break, but he'd already signed for Ferrari, it's like, oh no.
Well, see, this is the thing, right? Like Ferrari they're behind Merc in the standings. Right?
Oh, that's true.
And the on-track performance is not there either, and so it's like I'm not sure about this. Like, if I'm Lewis, you've got to decide whether you're a Mercedes person or whether you are trying to be Alonso, right? And if you're trying to be Alonso and you're trying to pull the Aston Martin move out of the bag, like, you've got to be really committed to that, and I feel like it would be an absolute destruction of his legacy to go to Ferrari and watch Ferrari everything. Like, here's the greatest question, I think, about Lewis going to Ferrari, beyond the performance of the car. Lewis gets so much freedom with Merc. He can do what he wants, he can say what he wants. It's not that it's his team, but they understand who he is. Can you imagine Ferrari allowing Lewis Hamilton to do whatever he wants, whenever he wants, and say whatever he wants? Like, I can't fathom how that would work, even if it's written into his contract.
Yeah, but, I think if Ferrari wants to take a step one way or the other, they need change. Because they've been locked into, like, P2 or P3 on the grid forever now.
Yeah, 3 years, basically.
More than that. I mean, you think back to, Sebastian Vettel's runs, like, with the kind of rule changes coming.
He came second, though.
Yeah, but they were second to Merc for a lot of years, and the Red Bull dipped in and out, and then you think back to Red Bull's dominance, and Ferrari was the second team, and and then you go back to they won Kimi won the world championship, but then before that they were second to Renault. They've been the second or third best team on the grid for 15 years.
But is the answer to change out your drivers? The article doesn't just be they're going to sign Lewis. It actually goes into the hypothesis situations that they say people intimately familiar with the situation are discussing whether they should shaft Leclerc or get rid of Sainz. And I just find, I'm not saying that it's not a good thing. I think it would be really interesting to do a swapsies with Mercedes for Leclerc. I think there's a lot of potential there. Actually, that does speak to some of those rumors from a few weeks ago talking about Leclerc going to Mercedes. But it feels so odd, and it feels so antithetical to Lewis. Ferrari doesn't feel like his team. McLaren felt like his team when he was there, and I know he sometimes didn't see eye to eye, but they were willing to handle him, right, and willing to accept who he was. Ferrari is the Italian Williams with more money, which is to say they hire a driver because they're a driver and they should get in the seat and drive the car. And I think that's not what is expected in McLaren. It's certainly not what's expected at Mercedes.
All right, well, here's another, if we're really going to go out on the rumor mill and hypothetical world, I think a lot of this could depend on what Lewis wants to do post-driving life.
Yes,
because
I would agree with that.
If he wants to, become a pop star, I think he stays with Mercedes. If he wants to rebuild a team from the ground up and show how good of, essentially, how Niki Lauda he is,
okay,
he goes to Ferrari.
You're saying that this is not about winning the 8th title. This is about winning the 8th, the 9th, 10th, and 11th title on the Ferrari team by rebuilding it around him.
I don't even think he necessarily would go for 8, 9, 10, 11, whatever. Yeah, he maybe gets 8, but I'm thinking, you think of what Niki Lauda did kind of in his later years, and not only as a racer, but then as a team principal or team owner, or a consultant of sorts. He got Lewis to Mercedes. He in his last season, he taught Alan Prost a lot that then Prost put on to go use. I see Lewis maybe stepping into that maybe more mentor role, and if he wants to stay around the world of motorsport, moves to Ferrari with the thing of, I am going to become the team principal in 5 years, or I am at least going to be the Niki Lauda consultant behind the scenes of, I can help you set up this car. I can help you design this thing. I know where it needs to go.
I think the reality is that is not what Lewis wants.
I would agree.
think Lewis, even if Lewis wants that, I don't think he wants to play it in that overt Helmut Marko type role. Like, I think Helmut Marko is kind of the most recent example that we have of somebody trying to do that since we lost Niki Lauda. And I don't think Lewis would want to be that. It just doesn't feel like his vibe. Just like I don't think Max would either.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, Sebastian's about the only one that I could maybe see doing that. Maybe Fernando, because racing seems like his whole personality, and he has no other personality.
Yes.
But yeah, no, I don't see, and that's why I think Lewis is ultimately going to retire with Mercedes.
Yes, I think so.
But
if he goes to Ferrari, I can't even.
I could see him in kind of a somewhat of a consulting role with Mercedes, given his relationship with Toto. As long as Toto's around, I could see him stepping into that Niki Lauda role. It will be very interesting to see what does come of the kind of final couple chapters of Lewis's career.
Yes, I think I would like to see him gracefully depart. I'd like to see him either win the 8th and go out, or have a really successful season or two, not necessarily win, but make it like it's clear that he's switched his role from trying to win to supporting the team and helping the team win the Constructors' Championship when George has binned it and lost the Driver Championship.
Did you see any of the news surrounding Max recently with the F1 president?
I did not. Any news I saw with Max was
it wasn't
about Le Mans.
Yeah, it was a lot around the if you don't like F1, you should leave sort of situation, because Max is calling out like, hey, you're futzing too much with the schedule, you're adding too many races. You know, a lot of things drivers and fans are feeling these days, while the dollar signs are ringing in whatever his name is, eyeballs. Dominic? What's his name?
Stefan Dominicalo.
Sure, him. Yeah, definitely, that guy. As he's like, no, we need 28 races on the calendar, and all the fans and Max are going like, that seems like a bit much, and no, we need more street circuits, and Max is like, I don't think we should have more street circuits. Maybe we shouldn't do more sprint races, and he's getting the gist of, well, you should, if you don't like Formula One, you should leave, sort of thing.
I feel like that's looking a gift horse in the mouth if you're the CEO of F1.
Yeah, I think it is very likely Max is out of F1 when his contract with Red Bull expires. I'm not sure he's going to renew that.
I would agree. I think the only thing that would save that is if Lewis stays in F1 until then, and that Red Bull drops back, and there is still something to prove against Lewis.
That would make Lewis 43.
What's Fernando, 41? He's clearly got 2 years left in him. And so I could see that happening. And the only person who I've seen on the grid that drives Max absolutely nuts is Lewis. And therefore I feel like you could get a bit of a James Hunt, Niki Lauda situation going on.
Yeah, Max really doesn't, I think, feel threatened by George or Lando or...
No.
Yeah.
No. Or Charles.
Or Charles, yeah.
Perez or Danny Rick or Lando or Alonso. Basically nobody.
Logan Sargent.
No, maybe Nick. Maybe he's scared of Nick. That's why he's got him in F1.
Yeah. And that's why Marco's trying to get him out.
Ah, there you go. That's exactly what it is.
Now he's figured it out. Yeah.
Sidetrack. I have been wondering, because the story is that Max had kind of said to Marco, you should chat to Nick to fill the seat to replace Pierre Gasly. I wonder if Max has cashed in some credit with Marco, and Marco's going to rule him with a bit of an iron fist from now on, because he's pissed off that he recommended a driver who's, to be brutally honest, crap.
We'll see.
Shall we wrap up?
I think so. Monaco,
Okay.
What do you think's going to happen?
Rain. Chaos.
Charles puts it in the wall?
I think Charles has to put it in the wall. My other vote for putting it in the wall is George, and Toto will absolutely lose his shit at George for doing it, and it will absolutely look like he did it on purpose. Even if he didn't, it will look like he did it on purpose.
we'll say Charles. I'll say Charles puts it in the wall during the race. George puts it in the wall during qualifying in order to wreck somebody's Q3 lap and help his position.
Yes, yes. There is a problem. You've got a paradox there. Like Charles not binning it in qualifying, meaning he might actually start the race near the front, which means he might have a chance to win his own race. And I'm not sure I can believe that happens. There's vibes. There is a universal moment that says Charles can't win his home race.
No, that's when his next electric store will crap out and they're not going to change it on the grid,
okay,
and then
point.
he'll have to
He's already
retire after
rebuilt
2 laps or something like that.
Yes.
You know, it's
Yes.
no Ferrari gonna Ferrari.
Yes. Yes, so rain and binning it intentionally.
I hope we get it at Monaco. That will be fun. That's
I
like
think it would make it an interesting race.
that's the like a variable conditions Monaco is like the one thing that can salvage Monaco from not being just a parade lap.
I do not disagree.
For bonus points, let's have the DRS available no matter what the rainy conditions are.
I like that.
It's not like they're going that fast anyway.
Exactly. Okay, so we've covered all the news from the late-breaking Imola race that didn't quite happen, but we are thankful that people like Yuki were taking the time to tidy up after the weather made a bit of a mess. We, as always, awaiting your feedback. Write into feedback@tinfoilhelmets.com and let us know your conspiracies, feedback, and wants. Also, tell your friends to listen, like, rate, and subscribe. And that's been another episode of Tinfoil Helmets.